It's interesting, isn't it, that we want to come at the question of AI with a Christian worldview, as you put it. I think one aspect of that we really need to lean into is those parts of the Christian life that are beyond just the cognitive understanding of doctrine. Because where AI is most able to appear human-like is in thinking, disembodied thinking. But being a Christian is about a huge amount more than believing the right things. It's not about less, of course. Paul would be very clear in 1 Corinthians 15 that there are core doctrines of the faith to which we must adhere. But also in 1 Corinthians 15, it's very clear that that's in the context of a church, a lived community, living out the reality of these things together and letting these things rhythm and pattern our lives. And when we see the Christian life as that, how to live as embodied finite beings in the world, in the light of these truths of the gospel that we call the Christian worldview, then it becomes much easier to see why AI is so inadequate compared to that, because it has no embodied lived existence in the world. It has no lived relational habits or liturgies, as James K. Smith and others have called them. And therefore, it can, at its best, help us to understand Christian truth better as it synthesizes different commentaries or draws things together from the Bible. And it can do that really well. But there's much more to being a Christian in the last days than simply thinking things.
Yeah, that's good. I have a couple quotes I wanted to read. I don't know if you memorized your book. Have you memorized? No, I found myself writing a lot in the margins. And so one quote I had, it's on page 36 here, and I'm just going to read it. And this is on the Trinity. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're partially coming from maybe biblical, but maybe a Van Tillian perspective here, with the Trinity being kind of like one of the first presuppositions. I don't know if that's would be correct, but so the Trinity, and I'm just going to read this, and then it says, if personalness is something that just happened to emerge somewhere along the evolutionary line, and that, who knows, will perhaps disappear again sooner or later, then persons are like the waves on the ocean, temporary configurations with certain ephemeral and sometimes curious characteristics, but no lasting cosmic significance. And if the universe is most fundamentally some combination of matter, time, and chance, then it becomes very hard to argue that one combination of those three is necessarily in of itself better or more valuable than another combination. So my thought was just that it seems that, that seems to be really important for the whole idea of, like, can AI become a person or an individual? And I think that kind of assumes an evolutionary, kind of like we're just building blocks. And whereas I think we would agree that it's almost like humanity is a one-way door that only God opens, and only God, we can't just build our way up to it. And so I just found that to be very important for some of the prospect of AI becoming sentient. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the Australian author Stephen Driscoll, who wrote a book, Made in Our Image, a sort of a Christian view on AI, is really good on this. And he points out, the really clear fact in Genesis that human beings are made out of two things. We're made out of the dust of the ground, but then the breath that God breathes into Adam's nostrils. And that, I think, points to what you were just saying, that there's a top-downness to human beings, as well as a bottom-upness. We are made from the dust of the ground.
Right.
But that's not everything that we are. And the way that he talks about it is that AI is just extremely cleverly rearranged dust, but it doesn't have that breath in it. I just think that's a really helpful place to start thinking about. So what's the fundamental difference then here? And then I think that same sort of argument is really important to keep in mind when we think about our value and our worth again. So in a biblical frame, human beings are important in the universe in a top-down way, not in a bottom-up way. So it's not because we're cleverer or more conscious or more sentient or have more agency than other animals or than anything else in the universe that means that we're valuable or have worth. It is because, in the words of Psalm 8, God has crowned us with glory and honor. The crown comes top down. We don't smelt it ourselves. And therefore, AI, for whatever it may be able to accomplish in the future, and no doubt it'll be amazing. Like, it'll be able to do things that perhaps we can't. That won't make it intrinsically more worthy or valuable in the universe, because our worth and value never came from what we could do in the first place from a Christian point of view. The flip side of that is, if you don't have a God who crowns you with glory and honor, if your value doesn't come from top down and you've got to manufacture it bottom up, then these are really scary times to live in. Because if my value is in my productivity and intelligence and language use and consciousness and sentience and all those things, then you really do get the impression that AI is coming for me. And when it can do all of those things better than I can, as perhaps it will in the future, then where does that actually leave me in terms of my fundamental worth and value in this universe? And where does it leave, my grandchildren and my children? And so there's a sense in which I think, because as Christians, we have a top-down understanding of who we are and why we're important in the universe. We need to be holding that out to people today who don't have anything other than bottom-up value and worthiness, and say, come and find sanctuary. Come and find a way of being in the world with us that doesn't depend on how clever you are, and therefore the AI is not coming for. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to be a sanctuary for people who are facing the prospect of becoming less valuable than machines on their own measure of what makes you valuable.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm prayerfully hoping that AI can actually serve to almost show us kind of some of the bad, even Christians, maybe especially the evolutionary thinking we've kind of let seep in, that our worth is tied to how smart we are, how good we are at our jobs, and not that we shouldn't strive to be smart or good at our jobs, but I know I really appreciate that I just think that for me at least, it's sort of showing me, it's reorienting my thinking to realize some of the assumptions I had, the last 15 years. And now that I'm seeing these really drawn out in this echo chamber, I'm realizing, like, wow, I've really partaken of that bad drink myself.